Thanks again for joining. My name is Clever Mukori, and I'm the Partner Relationship Manager at Bytespeed. For today's webinar, I'm joined by Jim Kerr, our E-rate consultant, and we've been working with Jim for such a long time. We're very, very privileged to have his expertise and his know-how to help folks at different school districts we work with get the latest information when they need it. We're actually dissecting through information that came through this morning, so we're excited to give you the latest and greatest and get you all the information you may need in this process. I'm also joined by Blake Roberts. He's our Cradle Point Solution Specialist. He'll speak a little bit to the different Cradle Point solutions we've worked with and how those can be a good fit for your district and as you move forward in this process. But thanks again for your time. And I'll get started here by just sharing some general information about Bytespeed. So Bytespeed's been providing customized computer hardware, 5 years of warranty and technical support and lifetime technical support, as well as moving more into infrastructure, so enterprise networking since 1999. We've been a Cradle Point partner since really the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, and we've grown to be an elite Cradle Point partner and have done more than 100 deployments in 30 states and installed Wi-Fi on over 2,500 school buses. So as everyone is aware, the reason for being here today, on the 19th of October, the FCC announced E-rate funding will be supporting school bus Wi-Fi beginning in Wi-Fi in school buses beginning in 2024. And I'm sure, like everyone here, excited about how this measure will really help students caught in the homework gap be more fully engaged in their learning. So at this point, I'll have just really cut to the chase here. I'll have my partner Blake just speak to a couple Cradle Point router solutions that we saw being deployed more widely. The one not mentioned here is the IBR 900, which was deployed to a less extent, but we focused on the two, I guess, better solutions to work with. And so I'll have Blake say a few words about these. Just these are names you will likely hear a lot. So in case you're not familiar, he'll provide some context for you all.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Blake. I'm our Cradle Point Solution Specialist at Bytespeed. I work with our sales and engineering teams to provide relevant Cradle Point solutions to our clients. Our team has a lot of technical certifications. We know the Cradle Point platform and products inside and out, so we're able to help you engineer any type of custom solution using Cradle Point. So for those of you who do not know anything about Cradle Point's platform, all of these cellular endpoints that Cradle Point manufactures are remotely managed through a portal called NetCloud Manager. So once these things are set up initially, connected to the platform, they're remotely managed, tons of different features and different licensing levels that can be applied to them to unlock the higher end features or just a basic essentials only license. So in front of us, we have two of the more popular routers we've seen deployed in school buses over the past couple of years. These mobile routers are ruggedized. They come in a metal case to survive being in a vehicle. On the left-hand side, we have the Cradle Point R1900 here. This is kind of the Cadillac of the mobile endpoints. This one's 5G ready. So if you have 5G in the area and you want to utilize that, this one's ready to go for that. If you're anticipating 5G coming to your area, this is a great option to go with as well. It can support up to 100 users on the Wi-Fi connection. And a unique thing about this one is you can actually attach a separate dock and enable 4 PoE devices. So we see a lot of deployments with such as cloud security cameras being deployed with the R1900. Overall, I would say this is the most popular router we go with. And then on the right-hand side, we have the IBR 1700, which is still a great option. 100 Wi-Fi clients. It is 5G capable with an extra dock attached to it. And this one's really popular for a dual SIM setup. So let's say you have 2 carriers in your area. You have one primary carrier, but there's still some connection outages in specific areas. You can go down and go in and narrow down where the connection drops in your area with that specific carrier. Set up your protocols in NetCloud Manager to switch over depending on the specific quality of service that you're getting in those spots. This device, yeah, like I said, 5G capable as well with the extra modem. And we actually have a solution where we can throw the IBR 1700 into a ruggedized case for a battery powered solution. So this is a great option if you don't own your buses, or you want a solution where you can take the router off of the bus and use it elsewhere for a pop-up connection. This case is waterproof, can operate in low temperatures as well. It's super simple to use. It's as easy as flipping the switch on, letting the device power up for a minute or two, and then just connecting your devices. I believe the battery life, depending on usage and the router that's in the case, I think 12 to 16 hours of usage is pretty standard. Easily rechargeable. Just open up the port on the side, plug it in, ready for the next day. Clever, anything that you think I had missed on the relevant features of these?
No, perfect. That was great. Also, I guess to point out, we added a fan inside as well. So if what you're seeing on the side is just a little lid you can pop up for the fan to keep the router cool, since there's both the battery in there and the router. And in the lid there, that's where the antennas are, in the top lid. You don't really have to unscrew it for any reason, but the antennas will be right in the lid there, and in the bottom, like Blake mentioned, the router and the battery. And all these routers, they would ship with the SIM of choice, so you don't have to unscrew anything to put a SIM or anything like that. So they're manufactured at our Bytespeed headquarters and shipped ready to go. So this question that came through here says, do you set routers up with private APNs and IPsec tunnels so internet traffic goes through school content filters? The NetCloud, maybe Blake can answer this as well, but our Cradlepoint routers come with simple compliant filtering from Cradlepoint. So you can choose to have, and so as part of their NetCloud offering, they offer that as well. But Blake, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, there are content filters you can set up in NetCloud Manager. Otherwise, I'm sure some of our engineers could work with the different features to use your on-site content filters.
Yeah. But Blake and I have learned a lot over the years, but we don't pretend to be engineers. And that's why we have actual engineers on our team. So to get maybe a little bit deeper dive into these kinds of specifics, we'd be more than glad to facilitate that conversation for you all. But yeah, you can keep the questions coming, and we'll definitely follow up on all of those if there's any we can answer afterwards. I did mean to mention that earlier. Feel free again to keep asking questions as we go. So the last slide here before we move over to more of an E-rate discussion type conversation is just for you to be able to quickly find the Bytespeed team in your area. Like I mentioned, we would have a sales contact, an engineering contact that can help you also. I'll wait for a second. It's bytespeed.com/rep. If you just want to take a quick photo of the QR code we've got here, you could do that as well. So a few more questions that came. Are your devices compatible with private LTE solutions? I'm so glad you asked. They absolutely are. We worked on a project at a county out in Arizona. Maybe I won't name it. I'm not sure if they would like me to at this point, but they were building a private LTE network solution. And what they wanted to do is to have one SIM that's a private LTE SIM and the other SIM be a Verizon SIM. So in that case, Cradlepoint devices, yes. In fact, their private LTE is a major focus for Cradlepoint. If you're not familiar, Cradlepoint was acquired by Ericsson. So this is definitely an area that they heavily focus on, not only with just providing LTE routers, but the broader infrastructure that's required for that as well. And Faisal here asked what needs to be specified on the Form 470 for this service. So that will transition us into more of the discussion that we'll have with Jim Kerr here, and that's exactly why we have him, to to give us a little more information on the E-rate side of things. I suppose just before we switch over, if you have any more device questions or Cradlepoint device type questions, keep them coming. We can answer them now. Otherwise, if they come through as we go, we can address them as well while we speak about the E-rate side of things. Perfect. Jim, I'll just go ahead and unshare my screen, and you can share your screen. And
thanks, Clever.
I had a gentleman ask here, to help with the sale, do you find selling the ability to use OBD2 port to monitor bus as well? Any thoughts on that, Blake?
That one I am not going to have the answer to, but we can definitely check some of our team.
Okay. I can't just speak broadly to saying there's a lot of sort of vehicle telematics that you can find out through the Cradlepoint, for instance, would set it up to say, hey, you know, and the bus is switched on after X amount of time, then switch on the router and things like that. So I think it's sort of eventually kind of what you're alluding to there, but we can get a specific answer for you there. It's not, we haven't answered that question just yet. But. All right, Jim, I'll go ahead and unshare my screen.
Thanks, Clever.
I did just get a quick response from a friend here who was watching the webinar. Yes, you can use the OBD2 to capture telematics. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, we're on a roller coaster here with school bus Wi-Fi being eligible in 2024. And I was talking to Clever yesterday afternoon, and sure enough, we were saying that we didn't know enough, that there was a lot of kind of squishy stuff about this that we weren't sure of at that point. And lo and behold, a public notice was issued yesterday, late yesterday, by the FCC regarding school bus Wi-Fi. So now we have a lot more information that we didn't have yesterday. And so I've been madly trying to read the thing because it just came through my feed this morning or first thing. So let's start with what we do know. School buses are eligible for E-rate or under the E-rate program. They are considered mobile and fit for an educational purpose, and therefore are eligible as determined by the FCC Commission. So we were expecting a public notice. They said sometime in November. What we thought was going to happen was going to be a notice of proposed rulemaking, but because the FCC declared that the school bus was eligible under E-rate, they kind of forego the entire notice of proposed rulemaking process and start initially with a public notice. Here's what we're thinking we're going to do. They do ask some questions about whether it should be category 1 and category 2, so we don't know that, but we do know that the attached eligible services list to that public notice include fixed wireless, microwave, or mobile. Underline mobile as being the wireless eligible for the school buses. So now that's how they're doing it. So we know that that's the first step, but notice it was under category 1, and there is no eligibility under category 2. They asked that question in this public notice for comment. So we know it's going to be eligible for the 2024 funding year. It's going to be at least eligible at the as a category 1 service, and then to be determined whether it's going to be category 1 for the service, the wireless service, cell service, or that's going to be category 1 for both the actual device and the service, or if it's going to be category 1 for the wireless and then category 2 for the devices, a la the Cradle points. So I would suggest that you, as an applicant, can probably start to think about filing this thing sometime in early December, and then that will coincide nicely when the eligible services list is actually released, which is going to be probably in early December. At the same time, they notify us of the timeline or window for 471s, that they're going to say that this is going to follow along with be a typical 471 application window process, i.e. opening sometime in early January, closing sometime in late March, with the last day to file your Form 470 sometime in late February. That's a crystal ball. They may push that a little bit to accommodate this. That would not surprise me, but I'm guessing that this is going to follow the normal standard process as on it as they are with this public notice that they just issued. Notice that the due date for comments is the 24th. So that's the day after Thanksgiving. I don't think they're going to be getting a lot of comments then for those 2 days, but notice that there is a very short public comment period. Typically that would be 45 days, and that's down to 30. And typically then there would be another 15 to 20 days of reply comments on the comment section. So extending it out 60 days type of timeline. They're not doing that. They're expediting this thing. So that's the good news. So we expect the timeline to look like something like the public notice was issued, PM, it should be PN. I'm just doing this as fast as I can this morning. Issued early November. It was actually yesterday, so now we're into October. The new rules issued December, and then the 471 window or 470 window will open sometime probably with notice early December timeframe is my guess. But I had most optimistic place there. We are in the most optimistic mode as we speak. So what we don't know, category 1 or category 2 combination of services. My guess is that it's going to be category 1 and category 2, and school buses will be another thing listed in category 2. How they attack, how they do that within the Form 470, whether it's part of the 470 drop-down menu or it's just another line item that says other or something, we're not sure of. But the good news is Cradle Point is already in the drop-down menus for category 2 services, so that should expedite some of this. Leased buses, whether they're going to be eligible or ineligible is unknown at this point. My guess is they're going to make them eligible with some restrictions. I noticed in the public comment or public notice this morning that there was a section about primarily used for educational purposes. Can we restrict this to only, to only teachers and students, so they have to have a pass or something like that to actually get on the network on the school bus kind of thing. So that's likely how they'll throttle and manage this situation as far as leased buses goes. Only eligible for the students riding on the bus. If it's used for anything else, then they would not be able to connect to that network. And then they do mention something I caught out of the corner of my eye as reading this thing, that we think there might be some sort of cap. They mentioned that they think the annual cost for this is somewhere around $1,840 based on ECF numbers. Well, the ECF numbers are skewed because the line items different between service and equipment and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not sure they took into full account all of the issues associated with establishing this service on a school bus. That number seems low to me, but that's the number that was in the public comment section. Whether it's going to hit your category 1 or your category 2, or your category 2 budget or not, we don't know. I would guess that it's going to go that way as a combination both of a category 1 for the service and category 2 for the Cradle Point device, but we don't know that at this point.
Hey, Jim, I've got a quick question here. I'm gonna try to cover them as we go. This gentleman here asking, would smaller transportation vehicles also be eligible?
If it's defined as a school bus, then I'm assuming yes, but again, I don't know the answer to that question at this point.
It sounds good.
My assumption would be if it's designated, if it's a smaller, like a bus for challenged students, physically challenged students, or something like that. Usually those are specialty buses, but they are buses. If you're talking about a van kind of situation, and it's students and they're being picked up and carried, transported, and it's owned by the district or the school system, then my bet would be yes.
Perfect. during the ECF fund, I can confirm we worked with some schools that have smaller white vehicle activity bus fleets, and those were done. But like Jim's saying here, that will be something to likely, but we'll take a look at. Another question here is, will Wi-Fi on buses be Category 1 or Category 2? We touched on that. And is the service Category 1 and the equipment Category 2? But I know
likely, that's likely, because if you go back to the eligible services list that they published, I didn't find anything in there on school buses. In the eligible services list, it doesn't mention school buses in the eligible services list that I can find. And I'm gonna have to go back and reread. I was literally, I mean, it's a lot of legalese type stuff you're reading, and a lot of thought goes into it, but I'm not sure is the answer, but I'm betting it's going to be Category 1 and Category 2.
Okay. Can you get copies of your PowerPoint to cover many school districts? And this would be a great help. Yep, we Jim, any opposition to sharing the document? I don't think so. Should be fine.
Not at all.
Okay. And yeah, you can expect that again as more information continues to come out. We'll maybe use the same format, just keep things simple. You know, Jim has a particular gift for reading legalese. He can put it in a PowerPoint format, and we can keep sending it as an email.
You give me too much credit, Clever.
It says, I think I saw this, that this E-rate availability will only be for routes that are 90 minutes or more. Any thought about that?
No, I disagree. I think it's going to be, if it's determined that there are students riding on a school bus, that school bus becomes eligible, even if it's for. I don't think they're going to make that kind of determination.
Sounds good. Do you know if the funding is eligible to include the installation, or if it is just eligible for the hardware licensing, or will be determined in Category 1 service?
So it will be a full implementation. If they put a cap on it, obviously, then anything over that for, that's it. Again, that seems like a low number, but that would be inclusive. And they do mention things like installation cabling, where you have to run the antenna differently than the device. So there is some cabling involved, both for electrical work as well as cabling for connections to the antenna specifically, and those kinds of things. So the answer would be a full plan implementation would probably be inclusive of installation costs, miscellaneous items. Sometimes, for instance, the Cradle point itself needs a different antenna. That additional antenna would be another cost associated with it. And those are not cheap, by the way. So that's why I say this discussion of $1,840 as an average cost is on an annual basis would be, I think, if you include the acquisition price of the Cradle point in 1 year, that's a low number. So we'll see how again, if you can amortize it over a 3-year period as far as the acquisition goes, and then apply each year for just the service with an installation cost over and above that in Category 2. That would be my thought, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay. There's one which was speaking about concern for smaller districts that may have maxed out their Category 2 budget. Any thought about that, Jim?
I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. So whether there's a discussion about that and expanding the budget to accommodate this, I didn't see it when I glanced, I speed read through this thing. I literally had 10 minutes with it. So I don't know the answer to the question. I'll leave it at that. I don't know the answer.
Okay. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, as Jim dissects this information, we'll put it into a PowerPoint format. So even this PowerPoint, we'll wait a little bit. He'll make changes to it based on the new information, and then we'll send you a PowerPoint with the latest info summarized for you. So there's this, will this cover devices that are already installed on buses and just need continued services?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll say that as a qualified yes. My assumption is yes. And that's, yeah, I can't believe that they wouldn't be covered for just the service ongoing. And I think there were quite a bit of these purchased through ECF. So it'll be interesting to see what the demand is for actual net new ones. I think it's going to be pretty brisk, but I don't think it's going to be like it was with ECF, frankly. But we'll see.
That sounds good. Are there any restrictions on the type of traffic the Wi-Fi is used for, student traffic versus bus camera / data?
There, again, I didn't catch that when I read it through, but I don't know the answer to the question. My guess would be that if you're using it for an educational purpose, then the extraneous applications that you would automatically get would be ineligible, but there's no way to cost allocate it out. So how do you do that? Obviously, the cost of the camera, as an example, would be an additional cost that would not be borne by the E-rate program. But any of those other kinds of services that would be associated with it would not be eligible in and of themselves. I don't know that they'll cost allocate it out.
There's a question here. Will we be talking about pricing? You can reach out to Bytespeed after. And Jim, maybe while we're talking about pricing, what at this moment is considered, under the fair rules of how to operate as far as pricing quotes at this point in the conversation, would you advise? Would it be okay for a school district to get quotes for routers just yet? How would you think would be the safest way to proceed without getting ourselves tied up in going against USAC rules?
So the fair, open, and competitive doesn't mean that you can't get a budgetary number. My recommendation would be not to take a formal quote, if you will, at this point in time, because that starts to get into oftentimes folks like to take those quotes and then incorporate them into their RFP process or something like that with just the list of equipment. That's probably not a good idea on behalf of Bytespeed. If, on the other hand, you want to say I have 30 buses and we travel we're in this region and we need these types of things on it. Can you give me kind of a budgetary number for 30 of them and, kind of what they would be? That's acceptable because you have to budget around this stuff. So you have to know what you're looking at, and what your expected costs are. So again, a formal quote or proposal would be probably not a good idea, but a budgetary number that says, hey, you're going to need 30 of these and 20 of these kinds of things in generic terms would be acceptable.
Okay, so just a generic email with some estimated numbers, but no formal quotes.
Correct.
Thank you for the guidance there. Yeah, so for the gentleman wanting to know specific pricing, you can just reach out to us and we'll be more than glad to provide it just under the guidance there that Jim was giving us, and make sure we don't, make you liable or anything like that, cause any harm to the district. Yep, you feel free to keep the questions coming. Otherwise, Jim, you can keep going.
That's what I've got. That's what I know.
Oh, okay, perfect. There's another question that came here. For Cradle Point equipment and installation, do you recommend listing any other equipment on the Form 470 other than router, cabling, antenna, connectors, and related components?
That would about cover it. Let's see.
That is a great question, because during
the
ECF thing, we recognized, to some extent, you do have to be thoughtful about how you're listing things, and how some things may seem unrelated, even though they are related. But what do you have any extra thought there or guidance, Jim, about how to think about listing equipment that's included?
So probably you're going to ask for a router, cabling, and antennas if you did that under category 2, obviously each one of those is connected or is an actual thing you can ask for in your Form 470. I would discuss in your narrative more detail on what you're looking for in the narrative section, so that you can the description of what you were actually looking for should be included up there as well in the Form 470. I don't have any other guidance other than that. Again, whether they adjust the Form 470s to accommodate this, obviously mobile is something that's probably not on the list right now. We'll see. I don't know.
Okay. And there's another question here. And would essential advanced licenses, 1, 3, or 5 year, what thoughts do you have there?
I always recommend the maximum length license you can purchase under E-rate. Typically 5 years is considered a no-brainer. I've seen 7 and 10 years licenses funded. So I would recommend that you go for at least a 5-year license if possible. That would be one. That way you don't have to reapply for it, 3 years down the road and, oh, we missed it. Or the worst case scenario is that the license includes support and suddenly I out of my license is expiring and it doesn't coincide with the E-rate cycle of July 1, those kinds of things. So the longer the term, the easier it is for you to administer, in my opinion. So take it for
that makes sense.
And
And
then,
Jim, would you say it's a correct assessment to think if you go with the 5-year, yes, there's the additional licensing cost, but then it does also help when you amortize the hardware to try to get closer to a lower annual amount? Is that a right way to think about it?
well, obviously a 5-year license is less expensive over time than a 1 or a 3-year license. It's usually cheaper. So if the cost is not an issue up front and they don't put a serious cap on this thing, then I would say that I would go with the longest term license I can. You can there's a bunch of ways to go about doing this too. It may be that you could, and again, this would get really creative. You could do it under a managed internal broadband services contract for the hardware and have somebody else manage it for you, i.e. support it and determine if there's a problem, et cetera, as part of your regular network. So you could actually do a managed internal broadband services managed service contract with the end user to provide this service, and then you could amortize it over multiple years. That would be a really nice solution if it can be done. So
That sounds good.
that's just thinking out loud and spitballing at this point. So
this question here: do your systems use UPSs? No, the Cradle Point router is powered by the battery on the vehicle, so we haven't had to install any UPS power backups beyond just relying on the bus vehicle battery. Is it your understanding that multi-year contracts would be eligible? We kind of touched on this, but anything else to add there, Jim?
yeah, that's standard. I mean, the cellular contracts would certainly want to be an extended or longer term contract, and just lock it in, and then you have to reapply for the cellular service on an annual basis. So, but you're locked into a 3-year contract. That means you don't have to file a new Form 470 every year, et cetera. So I can't imagine it wouldn't be multi-year.
Sounds good. Yeah, and on the other question about the UPSs, if you do go the battery-powered router approach, just the case itself, the battery would be sufficient and you recharge it. So yeah, no UPS for that either. And the other question here is, could we provide a link to the latest notice? Jim, could you make available
Absolutely.
to that for me, and
Yes.
I'll email it out to everybody?
Sure.
Okay. That's awesome. And Jim, will SIMs be covered as well?
I would assume so. I don't know.
Okay. Awesome. So just to reiterate, for now, as far as preparing going forward, we can begin conversations of just, hey, here's what my bus fleet looks like. I'm in this part of the country. Can you give me a rough estimate for what equipment and installation may look like? What else would you say, Jim, school districts can do to prepare?
I would suggest that if you are doing this as a standalone project and you're not incorporating it with something else or don't want to tie it into something else, that you continue to apply for your standard E-rate application, do your standard E-rate application process sooner rather than later. And the reason I say that is that we have a pretty good idea of what the eligible services list looks like. There's nothing stopping you from filing your standard Form 470 for any Category 1 or Category 2 services today, and then file another one for your school buses. We don't know. Thanks, Wim. How are you? I didn't know you were on with us. So good call. I hope this is Win, you can chime in here. I don't know if you all know it, but Win Hemsworth is an icon in the E-rate business on the applicant side, and we see each other regularly on some panels that we both belong to, or groups that we both belong to. So thanks for putting the link in there. And that was a great E-rate consultant, by the way, for the applicant side of this. Wim, if you have any comments, or you've had a chance to review the thing more than I have since I just got it this morning myself, please feel free to chime in via the chat. I appreciate your input. So with that, I'm going to kind of sign off here. I don't have much more to say as far as, what it's going to be like, because we just don't know, but I would recommend applying sooner rather than later. It'll save you, the mad scramble. If this thing goes the way I think it's going to go, it's going to be a mad scramble for resources to get these responded to in a timely fashion, within the 28 days and within the 471 window. So the earlier the better.
Perfect.
A famous gentleman in E-rate used to say, one of the old E-rate hands was, file early and file often. So
That's awesome. Thank you, Jim. And Bytespeed, like I was mentioning earlier, we're very, very familiar with the E-rate process. We've had a spin number for almost 2 decades now. So we'll be more than glad to work with you all. And so, yep. And like I mentioned, I'll send a recording of this webinar for your review. And in addition, Jim will take some time to read through the document here and send me slides like this with the summarized version. So if you want to dig into it, by all means, or if you just prepared to get the summary, or maybe to make sure the way you understood it is the way that it is, I'll make sure to send that as well.